So hi everyone, this is the Finance Committee home edition again. October 14th, 2020, this meeting is being recorded, will be televised. So tonight we have a few additional people that are joining in, all regarding the upcoming special town meeting, various different warrant articles that we're going to be voting on, discussing, deliberating on tonight. We have a few other items on the agenda, but we're going to kick off with the special town meeting warrants to make sure we get a lot of them out of the way. I will say that if you have your warrant article sheet handy, the idea tonight is to essentially go through them in a specific order. There are going to be some that do not make it under the purview of tonight, just because of either existing budgetary numbers that are not fully there, or some other pieces that we need to obviously arrange, like some zoning pieces. So the plan tonight is we're going to be doing 1 through 3. 1, 2, and 3 will be reading, deliberating, voting on. 4 through 6, Connor has some data on these, and he's going to share some numbers just in the standard budgetary type association share. But for the most part, I think we're going to be holding all of those till our November meeting. The 7 through 9 we'll do. Those are pretty straightforward, so we'll have those as items tonight. 10 through 12, we have some people from the CPA here tonight that are going to be able to explain those, discuss the actual pieces of them, questions, etc. Sort of give us an overview. I believe the same overview that they just gave to select board. So we'll get the same experience of what they saw. Obviously, questions are welcome, and then we'll deliberate and vote on those. And then 13 and 14. One sec. Let me bring Mike in. 13 and 14. We do have some people here tonight that we can speak to and actually get through. So those we should vote on, and then 15 through 19 should be November. So any questions on that? Is it pretty much a quick laundry list, but anything on that's not clear, it'll be obviously made clear as we go through, but just as a start, if anyone has any questions there. Seeing none. All right. So with that, let me pull open my warrant articles. So in the purpose of time, some of these are rather lengthy. I assumed, and Connor, keep me honest, we don't have to read the entire breakdown of some of the larger ones, like the municipal committee changes, things like that. The summary is probably fine. Obviously, this is a
it's a public record. Everyone here has it. It's on the website. You could just refer to each article. You certainly don't need to read the article or its explanation in its entirety. It's for record to have a discussion about it.
Wanted to make sure. I know that's been a point of contention with Mr. DePietro in the past, so I'm looking out for you, Mike. All right, so without any further ado, let's jump in. We're gonna start with, like I said, we'll start with 1 through 3. Pretty straightforward from a deliberation standpoint, open up to questions, etc. So Article 1, the annual vote to accept the town report. This article was delayed from annual town meeting due to COVID-19. Connor, do you have anything you want to add to this? This one looked pretty straightforward to me.
It's housekeeping. It's typically in May. The warrant for May was trimmed down to financial articles only under COVID legislation from the state. So I estimate roughly half the articles on this special town meeting warrant are things we would have normally done in the spring. So it's housekeeping. Once it gets voted, we have our printed annual town reports and it goes online.
Are there any questions or discussion points about this? Figured there wouldn't be. So with that, I think this one's pretty straightforward. Like I said, I'm willing to take a motion.
Motion to recommend.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Actually, we got to do this. We got to call it out. Sorry, my bad. It's been a while. I will go down my now participant list. So for voting, Christina.
Yes.
Who's next? Jeremy.
Yes.
Jennifer.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Michael.
Yes.
And Tim.
But mostly yes.
All right. Should have thought of that ahead of time. Make a quick cheat sheet. All right, so Article 1 passes. Committee recommends. Article 2, transfer to stabilization fund. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or appropriate by transfer from available funds a sum of money to be placed in the stabilization fund or take any other action relative thereto. Connor, I know you have some hard numbers for this. I figured you'd want to share.
Sure. So I forwarded to the Finance Committee a variety of documents to support tonight's meeting, including one, which I think I flagged as the second report for you. It's titled June Reports for FinCom Fiscal 20 General Fund CPA Enterprise. That is the cover sheet really gives you all you need to know as far as this article, which just identifies that we're estimating free cash. I'm sorry, maybe it's not the first page. It's at the end of the second page. Despite the economic duress that COVID has caused, we are estimating free cash for fiscal 20 to be about 1.6 million. That is being driven almost entirely, if you look through the detail there, through expense turnbacks. We did meet our revenue targets by 43,000, but that's obviously a pretty tiny margin for 82 million and change. And you'll see that variety of town and school departments turn back large six-figure numbers in their expenses. That's from a variety of things, but we implemented spending freezes and hiring freezes to specifically because we anticipated challenges financially, and also just because certain activities couldn't be performed during the most strict part of the shutdowns. So good news overall. Obviously, it's great to see, and not significantly off from free cash certifications we've seen in the past. We've been in the area. We've been trending down about 200,000 a year every year, 2.4 to 2.2 to 1.8, and now 1.6. So we did not identify a specific number in this article, Article 2, yet, and we likely won't. Because of the timetable that we are on. So this report got finished today, and also today the governor the state filed its first revised budget since January. So we're 4 months into the fiscal year, and the Commonwealth has no budget still. The governor pledged over the summer that his budget would level fund state aid, Chapter 70 and unrestricted aid in fiscal 21 rather than cut it, which is what we and many other municipalities forecast based on our past experience. And so if that budget ends up being adopted, that would be a significant variance to the positive for revenue for the town. We need to dig into it more. We need to see what the budget actually looks like as it works its way through the legislative process. Typically, the budget takes 6 months from governor's proposal to adoption. He wants it done by Thanksgiving, which is in 6 weeks. So we'll see where that goes, but I intend to have a budget change memo for covering this article, as well as the operating budget amendments at the select board's November 2nd meeting, which is before your next meeting in November, where we'll quantify things to the best of our ability with the information we have. But so the shorter version of that is free cash looks good, all things considered. And the state level funding revenue is a huge positive if that is in fact what the budget ends up looking like in its final form. And although these are both two pieces of good news, we don't want to get over our skis and assume that there will be no reduction in other revenues as years go on, particularly with federal funding for cities and towns still not adopted in a successor stimulus package, with CARES funding expiring in 2 months. There's a lot of unknowns still. So my top priority between free cash and unplanned revenue from the state would be to replenish a sizable amount, if not all, of the 500,000 of our own local stabilization fund we hit in the spring to balance our budget. So that's why the Article 2 doesn't give specifics yet. We're still getting more information, but we wanted to share that information with you because it's generally positive. So I wouldn't expect the committee to take a vote to recommend. I mean, you could if you wanted to say we recommend something has to go in the fund, but you can also wait till your next meeting in November and we'll have more specifics at that time. I'm happy to take any questions about either of those two things.
Anyone with questions, feel free.
Yeah, I have a question, Connor. So I think you answered this, but were these savings or turnbacks, were they things that we can expect, let's say next fiscal year? Or were they just, these one-time cuts that we made anticipating to be cash strapped?
I'm going to punt more to Wendy on that. Generally, we don't necessarily assume that a 1-year term back would be annualized forever as a permanent savings. But Wendy, is there anything more detailed than that general rule of thumb?
No, I think a lot of the savings too resulted just from everything shutting down. In addition to the spending freezes, we just weren't spending money on things like we normally would. I feel like that's resumed, not to the level it was before the pandemic, but it's definitely resumed to a higher level than it was back then. So I would not necessarily expect that you're going to see those kinds of turnbacks.
There's
And
also-
there was
Go ahead.
also the issue too, like with the school department, they weren't busing kids, to school. So, who knows what's going to happen this year with that? I mean, now with a hybrid model and everything, the buses are going to be running. So, that's probably not going to repeat.
There's other turnbacks in there that we can't necessarily count on. I think a low 6-figure number for 171,000 of snow and ice not spent, which is great.
Right.
I wish I could count on that every year, but New England and calendar year 2020. So I'll try not to jinx it, but and also almost 600,000 turned back in employee benefits and insurance.
Right.
Our premiums did go up with the GIC this year. We did identify that as a concern of fixed cost growth. And a lot of those turnbacks get generated through incentive programs that we've rolled out on a repeating basis, that every year you're going to probably get a diminishing return. Folks who can be incentivized to switch from a costlier plan to a more cost-effective one, given the opportunity to do so and a financial incentive to do so year after year after year, you're going to have fewer and fewer people that's going to work on, so to speak, and fewer savings. So I think this is a abnormally high amount of turnbacks, isn't it, Wendy? Normally our free cash is significantly generated by revenue.
Right. Normally it is on the more so on the revenue side, and certainly if our collections had been what they normally would be, then we would certainly have seen a much higher free cash number. If you look at some of those reports, like the property tax amount, the budget versus the actual, it's short by about 316,000. So we were really fortunate that local receipts were able to make up for that difference. And collections are something that we're going to need to keep an eye on too, over the next year. We have made some collections on for the fiscal 20 real estate taxes that we didn't get in by June 30th. We have collected some of those, but we're still not at that collection ratio that we would normally be at.
Thank you.
So one question that I have, essentially, and I'm not sure of the answer on this one, so this might be an elementary question, but when you guys got the sort of, when COVID started to roll, right, and you guys sort of had that emergency, let's start reinvestigating how this budget's going to shake out for this year, was the expectation of what state aid might happen, like what might happen to state aid, was that considered into the factor, and this level of funding is now effectively a benefit? This is a much better situation, and as such, does that mean that free cash for next year might be a significantly higher number because of that, or is this going to be something that can be reallocated into the budget as needed?
So that's not an elementary question. It's a good one. Yes, as far as is this beneficial level, normally we would not say yay level funding, but level funding under visa, we anticipated a cut of 8% to an 8-digit revenue account. So this is a variance of nearly $1 million. So that's good news. Whether or not it turns into free cash hinges on a variety of factors, including what we recommend a town meeting they do with appropriating it, and whether or not we incorporate all of it into the budget. Wendy, is there a more detailed or intelligent version of that, or that kind of covers it?
No, that covers it. And obviously, if we're going to be putting money into stabilization, that's not going to be part of the free cash certification, but it does factor into our reserve balance, so that's good.
Got it. Okay. Thank you both. Anyone else? Any other questions?
Connor, would you mind going over the CARES Act and when we would be receiving that money and how much money that may be? I'm not sure if it's in this fiscal or next fiscal, but I think it was sounded kind of to be determined.
Sure. So the CARES Act funding stretches 2 fiscal years. It's 6 months of fiscal 20 and 6 months of this fiscal year, because it's really a calendar year spend despite being a fiscal bill. So it's for COVID-related costs that were not budgeted for starting around mid-March 2020 through December 30th of this year. There was an allocation, I think, based just on population for cities and towns and schools that could use it. Easton's CARES funding was roughly 2.2 million, which is great, but there's a significant amount of restrictions and red tape, for lack of a better word, on what those funds can actually be utilized for. They can, most significantly, they cannot be used to offset revenue shortfalls driven by COVID. So Wendy just pointed out that property tax missed what we would have expected by over 300,000. We can't replenish that lost revenue that is clearly tied to COVID and the recession with CARES funds. You can only use it for certain, enhanced cleaning, PPE, and things of that nature. So we've spent roughly 650,000 of that to date, and but even that number is kind of a moving target, because as part of getting your CARES funding and your disbursements, you also need to seek first FEMA reimbursement, 75 cents on the dollar for other spending. So the reimbursements will come from a variety of federal sources. The rough figure of what we've used that funding for to date is about 650,000. If CARES eligibility for spending is not extended or restrictions are not loosened, it's going to be a significant problem for cities and towns. I assume around the United States, but I can say confidently in Massachusetts, it's something that's high on the Mass Municipal Association's radar, that they're very concerned that cities and towns have a variety of significant operating needs related to CARES that are technically not eligible for its use. And if Congress does not extend that December 30th deadline, we may be leaving money on the table when we desperately need it. So that alarm bell is being rung over and over by MMA. Unfortunately, most prognosticators are saying that they don't expect to see much until after the presidential election, at which point we're going to be 7 weeks away from the expiration of those funds. Did that cover it, Tim?
Yes, thank you.
Real quick, Connor, is it like very, very strictly related to like, I don't know, for lack of a better term, like medical stuff for COVID, or for example, would our increased like bureaucratic costs in order to run elections safely, which is obviously more expensive now, would that be eligible?
Yeah, so it's not only medical, it's for operating costs incurred by the town or school that couldn't have been anticipated before COVID. So that does include some election related costs, that includes certain school technology costs. It has been I don't mean to minimize its usefulness. It has been very, very, very useful. However, there are other things that you would assume, and Tim could speak to this, I don't know if he's still here. Fire department has transported hundreds of coronavirus patients. You can't use coronavirus relief funding to support those ambulance operations because I guess the theory is that you had those employees before coronavirus. Yes, everyone's being asked to do a million different things, a million different ways now, but you can't use the funding to pay recurring previously allocated costs.
Thank you.
Patrick, I think you're muted.
had to happen sometime. So if there's nothing else, if no one else has any other questions, I'm assuming we'll punt on this to November. Like, to Connor's point, we have a general estimation. I'm willing to bet that having a better understanding of exactly what the final dollars look like in the November meeting, considering there's going to be a presentation a week before us, probably the best way to go. So we'll table 2 for now, and we'll move on to 3. So 3, this one should be relatively easy. Payment of bills from a prior fiscal year. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or appropriate by transfer from available funds a sum of money to pay the cost of bills incurred in a prior fiscal year or take any other action relative thereto.
That's always a placeholder that we have for that every year, but we very rarely have prior year bills, and right now we don't have any.
So for this one, is this something that, do we keep this open for now? Because it could obviously, something might come up, I assume. We forgot to pay something somewhere, and it pops up as like a moment before town meeting, and we can clear it out in November or right before town meeting, or?
Yeah, we
Right.
typically keep it on the warrant until the night of town meeting, and if nothing comes up, we just dismiss it on the floor.
Right.
We usually, unless we have a particular bill, don't ask for a vote one way or another on recommendations.
Right, okay.
Yeah, and you never know when something comes up, because as you recall, we had that meeting back in July because we got that bill that came up from Stonehill. So something like that came up right before town meeting, then this would be a good way to take care of that.
Okay. So this one will also push. The idea behind this one is that if we do, for the board, or for the committee, if we do need to get to a point where we do have to have a quick snapshot meeting before town meeting, we'll obviously facilitate that right around that time to make sure that we have this if needed. If not, then we'll obviously keep moving forward. All right, so 2 and 3 are on wait, and then Article 4. So Article 4, 5, and 6, Connor, just to reiterate, obviously there's not final numbers for 4, 5, and 6. You had some information you wanted to share?
Sure. So 6 is final, I believe.
Oh, 6 is.
It's just debt rescission, which is housekeeping.
Yes.
4 and 5. So yeah, just to give the finance committee a look at what I'm planning to do. So Article 4 is going to be an omnibus budget article like we typically have, that we will be able to use to reallocate funds for departmental budgets. Given the governor's budgets came out today and none of that, this was not put in here with the anticipation of necessarily using additional state revenue for increased operational costs in any way. We'll take a look at that. Really, at least on the town side, one of the areas that I will be looking to change is that we are, after many, many years, approaching the regionalization of our dispatch services. That will be occurring the next month or so. And one of the driving factors years ago when the select board and the chiefs began working on that project was not only improved service through better technology, but just the general economics of scale you get when you regionalize certain services, your unit costs go down. And so we level funded the dispatch budget for fiscal 21, anticipating a certain amount of operational savings. And now that the building project is going to be wrapping up in about a month, and we have an agreement with the police for what's called dark station staffing, using our existing public safety staff levels without adding positions, we now know that we will save significantly more operating costs through going to the regional dispatch than we had anticipated, which is good news. And so I intend to make some adjustments in town department budgets out of that savings, which would still be within what the total town department spending authorized was. The town department budgets are basically voted line by line even for small departments with 1 or 2 staff. So moving money from one bucket to the other requires an amendment article. So that is one of the items I'll be bringing forward. And again, I should have a better idea of the specifics and quantities in my November 2nd memo to the select board. don't know if anyone has any questions or feedback or concerns with that, but I figured I would bring it up now rather than.
I just like that you use the phrase dark station staffing. I feel like I need to now work that into my own conversations.
I think it makes me think of The Expanse, but hopefully not.
Thank you.
It can always get worse if you see The Expanse. So yeah. So that's 4 and 5 then.
No, 5 is capital. So if no one has any concerns with what I'm laying out for the operating budget, I'm happy to move on to capital.
Anyone? On to capital.
Right. So the capital budget, we sent a PDF. What did we call it? Capital planning, fiscal 21 items not yet funded. So I believe everyone should have this. This is a spreadsheet that shows the capital planning priority list from the capital planning committee as was voted in the spring. And as you move rightward, the columns to the right, you can see which items were funded on June 22nd at the annual town meeting, what items were deferred. Since then, if those deferred items have been funded through another means. And then the rightmost column, which is unfortunately the most populous one, is items not yet funded. So as is typical for us, we usually fund certain capital items, even though it's a fiscal year capital budget, we fund certain items in the spring and we pick up a lot of other items in the fall. We do this because in the fall, we have a better idea on our free cash position and also just because of timing. We had a very, very, very skinny capital budget in the spring that prioritized basically the highest priority life-saving type activities and a couple of other really important timely capital items. But it was a very, very, very limited capital budget because so much was unknown about our economic outlook. So we will have another capital article on November 30th. It will be limited. It's not going to be super robust, and I plan to take care of and recommend, some high priority public safety related items that are annual, such as police cruisers. That's the highest priority of the capital committee that was not funded. We're going to review with schools some other borrowing related items for the school needs, some motor equipment for public works, and maybe a couple of inspectional departments. But overall, not expecting a super expensive or robust capital item in the fall. But I wanted to share the capital prioritization list. I think folks got it in the spring, but I figured this would be a helpful conversation prompt if anyone had any feedback. And again, I anticipate, like with the operating budget, that I'll have a capital memo for the select board on November 2nd that then the finance committee would have well in advance of your November meeting.
A quick question, I guess this would be for Wendy. Do you know, is the capital planning committee going to be meeting again before that time, or is right now the plan to just, okay.
Yes, because there are some items on here that not everything was given a ranking.
Right.
So some of the things were just deferred to the fall. And in particular, some of the things that we typically do every year, like the cyclical computer replacement, that was not given a priority. And the fall is when we would need to fund that. Otherwise, we're going to get off that 4-year cycle. So at a minimum, we'd want to try to incorporate that. And then we just, relook at, everything else that got deferred and added into the list.
Okay, thank you.
I had one question about essentially the COVID impacts to some of the school association pieces. Obviously, in looking through this earlier, there's things like carpets, there's things like, I feel like there's repaving at one of these. The question I had was that, has that, from a time basis and a wear and tear standpoint, that's obviously helped us as far as timing on some of this, but has that keyed into any of the ranking decisions that have been made? The fact that we had a significant chunk of time that these buildings actually weren't in use at the end of last year, going into the beginning of this year?
No, I haven't asked the capital committee. I would assume they wouldn't necessarily change their numerical prioritization, because a lot of the things that are listed for priority, for example, the RO parking lot that you identified, that was initially requested 6.5 years ago.
Got
it needed that work back then. So the lack of traffic relatively for a brief period of the most intense part of a stay-at-home order, in my opinion, wouldn't materially reduce the justification for an ask like that. It's really, in my view, related to just the ability to fund it.
Got it.
Davis, you're on the committee. I don't know if you feel any differently.
Yeah, it basically, like you said, it's for us, it's, we're on the one hand considering our 6, criteria. Right now, we're not really making it past the first one, which is just issues of like personal safety. And then on the other hand, we're also considering like, how long ago was this request made? Like, is it something like, do we keep kicking it year to year because we don't have the money, or do we do it because it's genuinely not urgent? So I think Connor pretty much covered it.
Awesome. Just a curiosity. Thanks, guys.
That's a good question.
Anyone else? Anyone else that has an ask for capital? Nothing. All right. So we'll skip capital. So Connor, apologies. I was under the impression that 6 was not finalized. Is 6 something that's finalized and from a housekeeping standpoint, we can vote on it and get it off the books, or is it still not something that we need to worry about until later?
Wendy, this article is in the form it will be, right? It's ready for.
Yeah, I have no plan to change it. It was a borrowing authorization. I mean, back from 2008, we never used it. And now we're going to be building a new school. So I'm not even sure if we could borrow for it now if we wanted to. It's so old that it's just time to take it off the books.
Okay. So this one's pretty straightforward to me. Does anyone have any questions about this, about the existing authorization and what our vote would mean tonight? Anyone with asks or questions? Seeing none, let's vote on this one. Can I get a motion for Article 6?
Motion to recommend.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, let's go down the list. I've actually got your last names correctly this time. Let's see. DiNapoli,
Yes.
Camelio,
Yes.
Stacy,
Yes.
Healy,
Yes.
Petro,
Yes.
Vamosi,
Famosi's yes.
and Helen is a yes. All right, 6 is recommended. All righty. All right, so with that, we're through the first half. Now we're on to 7 through 9. All right, so for 7, 8, and 9, these are weighty, but in effect, I figured I'll do the summary just to make sure we're all on the same page, and then there might be some pieces of this that we obviously ask Connor and team to lean on. Article 7, amend municipal building committee charge. Explanation. This article would update the municipal building committee charge to reflect current practice and construction costs. This is a huge paragraph. I'm going to skip that. This is, as Connor said, this is a publicly available document. Effectively, to summarize this down, this is a breakdown of how the NBC wants to charge these various different building projects. Connor, do you have a 2-line summary that we could easily look at, or something that boils down for the people at home?
Sure. The municipal building committee was charged by a vote of town meeting, which is not all that common. Typically, the select board would adopt a charge for a committee, or it would be prescribed by law. And at that time in the 90s, when the charge was voted on, they set certain expectations and standards, including that the building committee would be involved on any building project worth more than $50,000, which is effectively anything now. And there was no carve-outs or exemptions in that 1998 charge for conflicts between the municipal building committee charge and state or federal law. Specifically, the thing that prompted this discussion with the municipal building committee is that we have a school planning committee, which is a prescribed committee whose membership is laid out under the Massachusetts School Building Authority regs, and I believe state law, that very prescriptively says you'll have this person, this person, this person, and this person from a community on these public school building projects. Our 1998 municipal building committee charge is not does not comport with that. And so we end up, it's really housekeeping on that front, that if there's a superseding charge in state or federal law, that building committee will be the one in charge of a project. And it's just keeping with the times on the dollar value expectation. We have a highly professionalized public works department. We have extraordinarily rigorous or onerous, depending on who you ask, procurement laws that detail the way that we fund and manage public construction. So having a public committee for anything that costs more than 50 grand is frankly just antiquated. And this was voted on by that committee itself, asking town meeting to update it. So.
This updates that $50,000 limit to 500,000 plus, as you said, anything that's already got that existing written into it by law or by statute.
Right.
Association in the committee, then that's exempt as well. Does anyone have any questions on this one? Seems pretty.
Just quick question, Connor, just because I don't know a ton about their functions. So can you just give me like a quick idea of what the functions that the committee had done now or were, and then now my understanding is that those will basically just be handled by DPW?
Well, the committee would still have those functions for large municipal building projects over $500,000. They just wouldn't have it for smaller projects. They would basically serve as clerk of the works for a project. They would review proposals for design, bids, construction, invoices, and things of that nature, which again is also is expected of a DPW department. So it would still keep the committee for larger public projects, so that you would still have that important citizen participation. Say if we were going to do a $10 million public works building, municipal building committee would take a comparable role to what the school planning committee does with the early elementary school project.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Excellent. I will take a motion for Article 7.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
And a second. All right. DiNapoli,
Yes.
Tamelio,
Yes.
Stacy,
Yes.
Healy,
Yes.
Petro,
Yes.
Ramosi,
Ramosi, yes.
and I am a yes. 7 is recommended. All right, I've lost my thing here. All right, Article 8, Amendment of Local Historic District Bylaw. To see if the town will vote to amend its Local Historic District Bylaw, Chapter 152 of the Town Code, by asserting Section 152-13, Appendices, Appendix 2, expansion of the Ames Historic District, the following. I'm going to skip that. Explanation. At the 2010 annual town meeting, it was voted to adopt Chapter 152 Local Historic District, establishing the Ames Historic District pursuant to Massachusetts general law. The district at that time included the former Ames Shovelwork Complex and the 7 H.H. Richardson buildings located in the North Easton Village area. The establishment of this district ensured that the redevelopment of the structures located within that district would be appropriate and contextual with the historic character of the district. The Ames Historic District was expanded at the 2013 annual town meeting to include additional structures along Main Street, Sullivan Avenue, and Oliver Street. The Hayward Pool Historical District will afford protection and oversight to 5 historically significant homes and a cemetery along Foundry Street and Morse Road in South Easton. This article was delayed from annual town meeting due to COVID-19. This is a 2/3 vote at town meeting. Questions? This one seems pretty self-explanatory. I assume this one will garner a lot of discussion at town meeting, as they usually do, but I don't think there's anything in here that stands out for me as an ask or something that's besides what we've already been doing from a historical district standpoint within the town. Does anyone else have any concerns, questions, anything like that? Hear silence. I'll take that as a no.
Motion to recommend.
Thank you, Mike. I'll take a second.
Second.
DiNapoli.
Yes.
Am I pronouncing your last name right? I just want to
You
make
are.
sure. Okay. Tamiello.
Yes.
Oh wait, sorry. Tamelio. Stacy.
Yes.
Healy.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Ramosi.
Ramosi's, yes.
And Helen is a yes. So that's 8, it's a recommendation. Article 9, Amendment of Meetings Annual Town Election Bylaw. To see if the town will vote to amend its meeting bylaw, Chapter 44 of the Town Code, by inserting said existing language of Section 44-2 Annual Town Election. The annual town election may be rescheduled for a different date in said April of a given year, provided it is not before April 15th and not later than April 30th, by majority vote of the Select Board, provided such a vote be taken at a public hearing no later than December 31st of the preceding year, at which hearing cause for such rescheduling is heard. Is this, Connor, is this a sort of a, we've got an ability to obviously make some changes based on probably what we saw this year with some obviously difficult times with COVID?
Yeah, so this is just being proactive. We fully expect, as what public health experts are telling us, that coronavirus is obviously still going to be a major part of our lives next spring. Unfortunately, I don't love saying that, but it is what it is. And even if a vaccine is available by the end of the year, its uptake in the population will take some time. So it's likely that we're still going to need to prioritize social distance, mask wearing, and things like that. Schools obviously are tight for space right now because of the exact same circumstances. And we usually have town elections and other elections in the schools. The town's current bylaws on this is one sentence long. So that's how you know I didn't write it. And it just states it shall be the third Tuesday. And if we wanted to reschedule it to the weekend, for example, so that we did not have those logistical concerns, we would need to seek a court order against ourselves, which we did in the spring for one of the state primaries in March. So this is just trying to be proactive, and it gives a little bit more flexibility while putting parameters on it so that, you know, people can reliably expect the annual town election to be in the second half of April. And if it's not going to be the third Tuesday, the board has a hearing, they'll vote it. And by December 31st gives sufficient time for the clerk's office to get ballots that accurately reflect that type of thing. So really this is just trying to be proactive because we anticipate in the spring that a Tuesday trying to fit people into a school for an election while kids are trying to be spaced out is going to be unnecessarily difficult. And why not think ahead? So
thank you, sir. Anyone have any questions or comments, concerns on this one?
I have a concern/comment. I think it's a great initiative. I'd make it on a Saturday every time if I could. But if we have to decide by December 31st, is there a concern that we'll then anyways be getting a court order? I know it's obviously better to, you know, do this and hope for the best, but is that a concern of anybody?
do you mean if the decision is made in December and then some sort of other circumstances occur between January and April that warrant moving it again?
Yeah, but yeah, something, you know, obviously unforeseen.
That I suppose, especially after this year, no one would say that couldn't happen. But
Highly unlikely.
I would, it would be unlikely, but if that was the case, we would just have to go through the courts and do it that way. So, I mean, I suppose that's possible. And this would give a board flexibility to just vote to have that election on a Saturday. So,
okay, thank
but
you.
it's not outside the realm of possibility. We're thinking about coronavirus right now. I mean, for all I know, there will be some other thing going on next spring that none of us are thinking about right now that would require us to have more flexibility. But we have to try to balance flexibility in the legislation and actual administration of our bylaws. And if we were to push too far into the next calendar year for the decision to be made, the clerk's office would get bottlenecked on being able to get any materials ready for voting, and that could be its own challenge. Your concern's not illegitimate. We're just trying to balance those competing concerns.
Thank you.
Good question, Jared. Anything else? With that, I will look for a motion for Article 9.
I'll make the motion.
Look at this second meeting in, and she's already jumping right in. I love it.
That's leadership. I'm telling you, leadership.
Killing it. Who seconded it? Was that you, Mike?
It was.
All right. So DiNapoli,
Yes.
D'Amelio, Stacy,
Yes.
Billy,
Yes.
Di Pietro,
Yes.
Mimosi.
Most is yes.
And I am a yes. 9 is a recommend. Okay. With that, we're going to move into CPA. So we've got 10 through 12 for CPA. I think, Jim, are you going to be presenting something? Is this a presentation moment?
I think Stephanie has slides for you to look at.
Yes, slides. Okay.
I do have slides. If you want to share the screen, I mean, it's not essential, but they have some pictures.
You should be able to share. I have it set to all panelists. So you should be able to hit the share screen button, and you could pull that up yourself. Let me know if that doesn't work.
And Connor, had you emailed these to us too?
Yes, these slides were emailed to you.
Yep.
It's titled STM 2020.
Okay, can you see the slides?
Yes, you're up. You're on Article 11.
Okay. So I'll start. Jim will, I'll defer to Jim if for additional talking points and clarification, and Jim, feel free to jump in at any point. To start, at the February meeting this past year, this past February, the CPC did review and voted to approve 3 applications for CPA funding for fiscal year 2021 that are going to be on the November 30th warrant. The Finance Committee members will remember that CPA funds can only be used for 3 purposes, one being community housing, the other being open space and recreation, and historic preservation. I will mention that at annual town meeting in May, one of the applications that was voted on by the CPA in February, the CPC in February, was approval of the Affordable Housing Trust Grant, that the annual allocation to fund that group's activities. And then in May, they also voted to advance to May town meeting an article providing funding for a rental assistance program in light of the impact of COVID on families that may be out of work and were having difficulty paying their rents. And that, I'm not going to go into detail on that program tonight, but that program has been successful. These articles, again, were voted in February, but they needed to be pushed off to the special town meeting this fall. The first article is for funding for improvements, structural and roofing work that needs to be done at the Wheaton Farm barn. This application was submitted by the Easton Conservation Commission. The barn is located on Bay Road. It's within the Wheaton Farm Conservation Management land, and just for point of reference, was part of a property owned by Daniel Wheaton, who happened to be one of the biggest farm operations in Easton. The barn was constructed circa mid to late 1800s, and it's an iconic landmark for travelers along Bay Road. The barn's in a state of disrepair, and it really needs some structural reinforcement and repairs to ensure its long-term, sorry about that, long-term preservation. In 2018, the Conservation Commission spent $13,650 of its own conservation funds to commission a bid-ready plans and specifications for the structural repairs. We had learned when we tried to go out and have the repairs done several years ago that under the state procurement and bidding laws that you need design plans for any type of structural repair. So they had that work completed, and that the documents were developed. And this application seeks funding for those repairs, and it's a $190,000 request. Jim, do you have anything to add to that?
Just to add that we've already appropriated, the town has already appropriated $14,000 towards this effort in a previous town meeting, and that will be put towards this 190,000. So it's actually going to be a little bit less than what it says. Also, the barn is in use, supporting Langwater Farms' efforts to grow food in the community under a lease with the town.
I'd also like to say that at a fall public input session that the CPC sponsored, fall of last year, it's hard to believe a year's gone by already, there was a lot of support for preserving this barn. And as I understand it, at the February meeting, there was a lot of input from the public in support of the barn.
Quite a number of young people in the community have had history at the NRT summer camp, which was supported within this facility.
Are there any questions about this one? I figure that's a good point to stop and open.
Yeah, I had a quick question. With the barn being leased to Langwater, is there any public use of the barn available after it's restored?
Not at this point in time. And while they're utilizing it, there was some talk at one point about possibly holding classes again. If there was an organization interested in doing that, but there really seemed to be a conflict with the farm operation and liability, questions of liability, and having other classes, especially with children, going on at the same time. It's not that that's something that couldn't be revisited in the future. And the lease agreement, it's actually a license agreement, and that was valid for 5 years. I believe that we're coming up on the 5th year. And then it will be a year-to-year renewal up to 10 years.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I can't see everybody, so you got to yell it out. Silence is golden. With that, then, if there's no additional questions for 11, I'd like to open it up for a motion.
Motion to recommend.
Is it Jeremy? Jeremy, thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Let's go down the list. DiNapoli. Did we lose you? I think you're on mute.
Sorry, yes.
Not alone. I'm not the only one who did it tonight. Temilio.
Yes.
Stacy.
Yes.
Healy.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Famosi.
Famosi is a yes.
And I am a yes. So that's Article 11 is recommended. Alrighty.
Okay, Article 12 is a request for funding.
Sorry, not to interrupt. Did we skip Article 10?
Article 10, yeah.
Skipped 10.
Oh, okay, that was the first one.
I wasn't sure if there was like more to it than you wanted to get back to it at the end, but
No, I think I was just quick on the trigger in
Sure.
promoting my slides. This article was submitted by the Easton Recreation Commission. Last year, the town voted to approve CPA funds to develop the design and engineering plans needed to construct up to 6 new pickleball courts at the Unionville Park. One thing I want to mention is that what you'll see with each of these funding requests, there was an initial study or master plan that was completed to prepare for the grant request for the full funding to construct or advance the repair works, other work that was going to be needed as a result of the studies and plans that were completed. So those plans were completed. And this request is for the construction of the courts. Pickleball, which is played, as I understand it, I've watched it a little bit. It's played with oversized rackets and a ball similar to a wiffle ball. And it's really growing in popularity with our older population, not only in Easton, and there's quite a league going in Easton, but across the country. And I've also been told that a lot of younger children enjoy playing the game as well. So this project actually meets a lot of goals that were outlined for recreation needs for a broad range of residents, regardless of age and ability, and needs for more active recreation for our aging population, especially as people's health has improved over the years as they age. They remain more active, but maybe not up to the point where they want to play tennis anymore or basketball. And this is an activity that is less stressful. So the proposal is to construct 6 new pickleball courts at the Unionville field up in off Route 138. And it will include associated fencing, access paths, expanded parking for that park area, site drainage, and related work. And the request is for $320,000. And I'd also like to point out that while this application was submitted by the Recreation Commission, it was brought to the attention of, or the need was brought to the attention of the Recreation Commission by a group of residents who are very active in forming the league and organizing the team play within the existing facilities, which really, until recently, just existed of playing on the tennis courts up at Unionville.
So if I remember this correctly, the construction is on this diagram as well. That roadway is obviously 138. The 2 existing tennis courts are there, and then it's going to be subsequently stacked behind those 2 tennis courts in that back area.
Yes. So these are the existing tennis courts. They will remain active, and the new pickleball courts will be constructed here. There'll be a row of trees here, and there'll be an allowance for benches along here. And this is to provide shade. Right now, if you're familiar with this park area, there's some trees, I think, along the border here, but this area is really out in the open. So there was really thought that we needed to provide some shade for people as they're playing. And you'll see there's additional formalized parking proposed in this area here. Right now, the parking is shared with Unionville Pizza, the Union Villa.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Same rules as before. I can't see all of you, so feel free to just
Is there also a softball field or a baseball field there?
There is a softball field here that, as I understand, is primarily used for t-ball. The way it's situated, it's not suitable for baseball because the balls would be hit out into Route 138.
Okay. Would that remain there? Is that part of the plan?
The plan is right now to keep it as it is.
Okay.
Jeremy, did you have something as well?
That was my first question. Great question. The second one was, this might be a stupid question. Can you use the courts for anything else? Like besides, can you use tennis? I think it's a great initiative. I have no idea what you can use these for.
What are you saying, Jeremy? You don't stand for pickleball in your town? I get it. It's okay.
I don't do much. I don't do much of anything, if it makes you feel better.
And Jim can join me, speak up if he has more to add. Really, the pickleball courts are pretty dedicated for that use.
Right. I think this has been probably one of the most active group of community volunteers that have come forward to support this of any project we've had in recent years. And they're actually going to put some skin in the game and build some storage facility to keep rackets and other materials on site. And they're doing the organizing. They're working with the rec department on that. So it's, they've been anxious. We'd like to see this move forward.
Thank you. It's great to hear.
Anyone else as I scroll through the list of everybody?
What is the surface like poured asphalt, or what is the court made of?
It would be when you say poured asphalt, I'm not familiar with that term.
I'm just not sure. Is it asphalt or is it?
It is an asphalt. It
Okay.
would be an asphalt surface. Yes.
Perfect. That's what.
Yeah. Yep.
Did this include
And
any
it's been
repairs for
very
the existing facilities, tennis courts and basketball?
I'm sorry.
Did this include anything for repairs in the tennis courts and basketball court as well, or just the new construction?
No, it's just the new construction of the pickleball courts.
And I just had one question. You had mentioned an area that the pickleball players could keep their equipment. Would that be open to the public as well?
This would be locked so that equipment doesn't get vandalized or stolen.
And how many people are part of the current pickleball league?
Jim, do you call, I mean,
We had at least a dozen people at our meetings, so I don't know the answer to that. I don't know.
I want to say between 50 and 100 people.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
So if the finance committee wanted to join the pickleball league and take out some aggressions from the various different meetings that we are in, there's no barrier to entry, effectively, is what I'm asking. Anyone can join.
Right.
And then that equipment is a common use equipment.
Yes.
Got it.
When you say common use,
For the members
people have their own pickleball rackets.
Oh, okay. So it's just storage abilities for them to store them there if they so choose.
Right. Right. The nets to store the nets, to store the balls. It's my understanding that the league, the utilization and the league are coordinated through the Recreation Commission. They pay fees to the Recreation Commission for use of the tennis court. They would pay fees for use of these pickleball courts as well. And that helps to pay for the maintenance of the courts, and it also helps cover the cost of balls and replacement nets.
Anyone else?
Yes. So I have a couple more questions now. So going off that, are the nets going to be locked? Like, are those some things that's removable? If I show up with my own racket and ball, I assume, am I able to play if I'm not in this league?
My understanding is, Jim, you look like you're going to say something.
No, I was thinking that the facility is operated through the Recreation Commission.
Yeah.
And so whoever wanted to play there would have to coordinate so that there wouldn't be a conflict with usage. But there's 6 courts, and I would think that there's ample opportunity for people to drop in and play. It would just be coordinated through that organization.
Okay, that honestly does bring up some concerns about equity. But my second question is, have there been any analysis or thought into runoff with all these new asphalt surfaces, specifically the parking lot?
Drainage is part of the design, and you can see this is a drainage area in here.
I understand the drainage. I'm saying the environmental impact of the oils, the toxins that are going to be on that asphalt surface and inherently in the asphalt, as far as runoff into all these surrounding neighborhoods and our general water supply.
So when you're talking about runoff from the asphalt, I mean, asphalt itself doesn't leach into the soils.
My main concern is the parking lot, the surface
So
collecting.
as part of your drainage system, you have water quality structures that are like oil grit separators that as the stormwater runs into the catch basin, the oils rise to the surface and then the stormwater infiltrates or is directed to an infiltration chamber.
Thank you.
But it's clean. That's part of the drainage system, is to clean the water and separate out those oils so that they don't infiltrate into your soils.
Any other questions on pickleball?
Motion to recommend.
I have a motion to recommend. Tim, was that a second?
Correct.
Thank you. DiNapoli,
Yes.
D'Amelio,
Yes.
Stacy,
Yes.
Healy,
Yes.
Petro,
Yes.
Vamosi,
For most easy, yes.
and I'm a yes. 10 is recommended. All right, on to 12.
Okay. So again, going back to the theme of actually doing some work in a study ahead to identify when you're working on, in particular, historical restoration project and understanding the full needs. In 2017, the CPC voted to expend up to $25,000 in administrative funds to advance a study and develop a master plan for restoration and rehabilitation of the town offices. And with the understanding at that time, similar to with the pickleball courts, that the town would then be seeking funds for the cost of those restoration rehabilitation efforts. That plan was completed in January of 2019. And this application, which was submitted by the town, is for restoration of windows, doors, the entrance portico with the columns. Anyone who has been to the town hall and really looked at the columns can see that they're deteriorating and in very poor shape. Roof and gutter and trim work. And the goal here is to bring the historic mansion back to a state of good repair so that it can be easily maintained and taken care of by the town's DPW into the future. This is a Greek revival structure that was owned by Mary Ames Frothingham, and it was donated to the town for town offices after her death in 1960.
And then this project was actually the CPC requested of the town that they go through this study so that we knew the extent of what needed to be done and it could be done at once. And so it's a large project really because that is more cost efficient. And when it's done, then the town can take over the maintenance of it. A lot of the restoration can't be done by town employees because it involves specialized equipment, materials, knowledge in the restoration area. But once it's restored, it can be maintained by the town on an ongoing basis.
This addresses exterior restoration. Are there any sort of pending, and this might be a simple question, are there any pending or upcoming needed interior restoration asks that are associated with this, or is it the external facade of the building is truly the sort of the restoration type thing? Jim, to your point, there's specializations of that, and the
right. The CPC committee has, because of our limited funds and the great need in the community due to its historic nature, we have focused on protecting these assets to the community from the elements. Basically, we're looking at, as we did with Unity Church, as we did with, we are continuing to do with Oaks Ames Hall, we've done with the library, we fund the protection of the asset. And so we're not looking at the interior. And that's not something that we would be involved with.
Would there be anything on the interior? I guess my question is partially that, so thank you for that answer. But the other side of it would be, is there inherent, I don't know what the right word is, historical association for the interior as well that would require some other type of restoration effort to bring certain things up to current code or current status, or is that less of a historical impact because it's already being used for multi-use association?
You know, I talked with Greg Swan, who is the assistant town engineer, about this, and really their focus at this point in time, because of the ongoing maintenance needs, and as Jim just pointed out, the restoration work that needs to be done, it can't be done by our DPW staff. So the idea is to really button up the exterior so that the ongoing maintenance of that can be conducted and done regularly to keep the building up. And then once that's done, they will start looking at what type of interior repairs are needed.
So could an interior repair be a CPA? Jim, you might have already.
If it's related to historic preservation, it could be done.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
Just for the committee's edification, though, to be clear, that's not something the CPA committee has made practice of, to my knowledge, Jim, nor is it something DPW has traditionally done. We try to maintain the interiors of our facility to the best of our abilities with the limited capital funds we have. So I'll just echo what Jim and Stephanie have already said, which is that the real thrust here, the real historic preservation benefit is the exterior of the building.
Got it. Anyone else?
Two questions again. The first one is, assuming if this doesn't go through, I assume this would fall into the town's capital needs. And then the second one is, for this roof, is there, but it doesn't sound like there is, any intention to put any solar panel or alternative energy on there? And if not, why was that not considered?
So was your first question, if this is not funded through CPA, would it default to the town's capital needs? In one sense, perhaps, but functionally, no. Our capital capacity, as you can see from the document I sent you tonight, the list of deferred greatly outpaces what we can afford to fund normally due to a structural revenue gap, and that's just going to be exacerbated significantly in the foreseeable future. So functionally, the prospect of that being funded through traditional capital with borrowing and free cash is very small. We have recently had to offline annual borrows of $500,000 a year for roadways. So the prospect of doing 3 years worth of road funding instead is small. Secondly, it's important on that note to remember the appropriateness of this funding source. The CPA was adopted by the voters of this town to preserve historical assets, and there is no historical asset in Easton, Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, that is more utilized by the community than the town hall. So it's a very appropriate use of those funds. And then as far as the question of solar panels, there's a few different ways to slice that. Functionally, from a net metering perspective, Easton's been a leader in solar, and we are capped out. Under state law, there is a maximum amount of solar energy you can generate as a municipal government to offset your carbon footprint and your utility bills, and we hit that limit years and years ago. We get creative with other purchase agreements of solar net metering credits from outside of our jurisdictions. And I believe we may be, and maybe Patrick knows off the top of his head, I think for the early elementary school, we're considering having a roof be solar ready because that's going to be a 50+ year building. And perhaps those laws will change in the future and we could put solar there. But in the near term, we're maxed out on those credits. And then from an aesthetic standpoint, this is a historic structure. And one of the things that the voters of this town are buying, so to speak, if they vote to appropriate the CPA fund, is preserving the exterior envelope from a structural standpoint, but also from an aesthetic and historic preservation standpoint for forevermore. So putting solar panels on it would not necessarily jive with that. Jim, is that a fair?
I would say yes, and that's not something that CPA would be involved with, I don't believe. It's not historic preservation.
Does that answer the questions, Jeremy?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you.
Connor, to your point, yes, the roof will be solar panel ready, so to speak. We're not putting solar panels on it in the current stance because of exactly what you just illuminated. But Jeremy, that is one thing that if and when solar starts to expand and those credits and associations are available, then we're going to be pre-building that opportunity in there to set something like that up. Anyone else on Article 12? Any other questions? Any other comments? Excellent. If nothing else, then I will take a motion for Article 12.
Motion to approve, recommend, whatever.
Good.
Did someone second? I didn't hear it.
I did.
So that's all right. DiNapoli. You might be on.
Yes.
There we go. Tamilio.
Yes.
Stacy.
Yes.
Neely.
Yes.
DePietro.
Yes.
Bamosi.
Mostly is yes.
And I am a yes. 12 is recommended. I think that's all the CPA. Am I wrong?
That's it.
That's it.
Excellent. Guys, I appreciate you taking the time. It was really helpful. I really appreciate it.
Do you want to speak to the 14 out of order on the street acceptance quickly? It's not CPA, but that's Stephanie's department.
That was what
manages.
we were asking about. Yeah, that'd be great. If we could jump to 14 for the street acceptance for Silver Drive, that'd be, if you could give us a quick, it makes relative sense. I want to make sure that everybody on the committee has an understanding as to what this right of way change looks like from a from our side, what we're recommending or not recommending in that case.
You said change. This is not a change. This was a subdivision roadway that was approved by the under the subdivision law by the planning board, and it was intended always to be a public way. We do have subdivisions where the roadways are permitted as private ways and are not to be accepted by the town. But this road, Silver Drive, was always intended to be accepted by the town. They've completed all the construction on the roadway, and they have asked that it be accepted by the town. And one of the things we try to do is when roads that are intended to be accepted as public ways are completed, we try to get those accepted as quickly as possible and move forward on them.
Excellent. So the short explanation from the snapshot explanation is that this was obviously completed in 2009, recently inspected, found to be in good repair and in accordance with the as-built plan. So that's an acceptance ask for recommendation for us tonight. Are there any other questions or anything else that we can address on 14? I see none so far. So with that, I will accept a motion for Article 14.
Motion to recommend.
Thank you, Michael. Do I have a second?
Second.
Davis. DiNapoli.
Yes.
Running out of room here. Tamilio.
Yes.
Stacy.
Yes.
Healy.
Yes.
DePietro.
Yes.
Bamosi.
Mostly is yes.
And I am a yes. So 14 is recommended. All right. With that, Stephanie, I think that's everything we needed from you. So I
Well,
appreciate
thank you very much, and thank you for taking that out of order.
Sure, yeah. No, we don't want to make you sit around for too long. We're going to be stuck in here for another 5 hours, so we're going to let you go. You can jump out if you need. I'm kidding.
All right. Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So CPA. Actually, we're on the last one, strangely enough. Connor, do you have something you wanted to throw in there? You looked pensive. Are you pensive or are you just looking at the screen?
I
He's
don't
fine.
know what pensive means.
Town
He's
manager.
not pensive, he's
COVID.
thinking.
I don't know what's going on. So the only one we have left tonight is 13.
Sure.
15 through 19, we're gonna wait for November. 13, I'll read the explanation, and then Connor, I'm sure there's gonna be some questions and some additional coverage for it.
Sure.
Town meeting voted to adopt a sewer district map with 5 discrete needs areas in 2010, including the 5 corners needs areas. Any property identified in the needs area would be eligible, although not guaranteed for future public sewer construction projects. However, parcels outside of the districts are not eligible for connection to a sewer unless town meeting amends a given needs area. In this case, a property, 20 South Street, directly abuts the recently completed 5-corner sewer system and could connect to the infrastructure provided 1, town meeting allows the property into the district, and 2, the property owner pays a proportional share of the infrastructure costs, i.e. a privilege fee, commensurate with the betterment assessments neighboring property owners will pay for their sewer access. Five Corners has sufficient excess wastewater treatment to treat the needs of this parcel, and its connection to the system would eliminate the necessity of septic use in the immediate area. The inclusion of the parcel in the sewer district does not amend or alter currently allowable land uses under the town of Easton zoning bylaw and only changes the wastewater treatment option available to these properties. Pretty clear to me. Are there any questions or asks or discussion needed on this one? The only one other thing that I wanted to raise.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Mike. One other thing I wanted to raise is that this is currently just limited to the 5 corners, right? If someone in a significant distance, based on this existing the drawn up plans for the 5 corners sewer district, if someone is a significant distance away, they could not obviously apply for this. This is within a specific, essentially boundary area for that sewer district, and thus it's an application association.
No, so there's no application process to request the sewer district be expanded. It's just a conversation with a property owner who says, hey, I notice you have a sewer district that ends 3 inches from the extent of my property. Would the town consider expanding the sewer district? This is really just a function of when you draw a map, someone has to be the last property in and someone's the first one out. And so the first one out, under current allowable zoning, could build some homes there. And now that there's a sewer right there, the developer is basically saying, I would prefer public sewer rather than to build 20 septic tanks or a shared septic. In theory, someone far outside a district could, but you try to have sewer districts be contiguous. You don't want to do spot districts where house 1 is in it, house 2 is not, house 3 is, because it can get tricky because you're running a public utility by someone's property. If they're surrounded on all sides by the sewer, it's questionable that they shouldn't have access to it. So this is just expanding the map by 1 parcel.
Thank you.
Hey,
Connor, is that-
One real quick question. I mean, I'm completely supportive of this, but I was just looking at the map.
Yep.
Is there a reason they weren't included? I'm asking because it looks like somebody just forgot to highlight a parcel.
It's a good question. I don't know because truthfully, the comprehensive wastewater management plan, which is a required plan that preempts or presupposes a sewer district being adopted. So these districts were adopted in 2010. The work on those studies was in the early to early part of the first decade of 2000s, and I was in middle school, so I don't know why this is the first one out.
Okay, just looking at the map, it just seemed funny. Sorry, I'm good.
Can't blame Connor, but everyone else is correct. Okay.
That was my diplomat.
Wendy, on the other hand,
I was here when they did that study.
Ah, there it is. Blame.
And a lot.
There was somebody else that had a question.
Tim, do you want to ask yours first?
Yeah, is there a plan for a multi-residential development on that parcel already, or is that something that we should be concerned may turn into a commercial development later? I know it said the bylaws don't change right now, but if it connects up and then there's a bylaw change to make it commercial, what would that do for our wastewater?
So is the question, does adding this to the sewer district now and then a hypothetical zoning change later have a possible negative impact on the wastewater?
Correct. And is there already plans for is this a single, I'm unfamiliar with the parcel. Is it a single family home now that they're developing into a larger property?
It's undeveloped right now under the current flexible, what is it called? The flexible development special permit zoning that's in place there now. A builder could build roughly 20 single family homes on the 16 acres. So it's slightly more dense than your more traditional 1 acre per home. But that's the kind of active plan by the developer. They're not looking to necessarily make it commercial. The planning board is rezoning a large portion of the Five Corners area. This is not part of it. So this article is limited strictly to basically a technicality to allow them to tie into that sewer.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Real quick, Connor, I have kind of two questions. So the first one is, so my understanding is that by adding them into the property, basically the idea is that, yes, the town does have to pay to extend the sewer, but part of it is we basically charge them, a fee for it, similar to like what the other people around them that are being hooked in pay.
It's actually a better proposition for us than that. We don't have to do anything. The sewer pipe's already there. The project's been paid for and it's done. They pay a commensurate fee called a privilege fee. That for equity, right? So you don't get into it after the fact and get a better deal than a homeowner down the road. But what that payment offsets is not an additional incremental cost of us running more pipe, to use your example. It's for them to pay for what they will now own as a portion of the benefit of that infrastructure. So when we build these projects, this is our third one in the past 7 years, and you don't allocate every single gallon of capacity out of the gate for a variety of reasons. One is what Tim spoke to, which is you don't want to get into a situation where you go through this massive capital upgrade and then one person expands the use of their property and you're tapped out. You have no more wastewater capacity. That doesn't do a lot of good. So we typically, when we build these sewers, allocate a certain amount of the treatment capacity. And when you do that, you better that amount. So the improvement, the proportional improvement someone gets for having that access, they pay a fee for. The town holds on to a certain amount of treatment capacity. And we not only hold on to the treatment capacity, we hold on to the cost through borrowing. And so we keep general debt on our books for a proportion of our treatment, and then with the goal of doing exactly this, of selling it in the future. So we don't actually need to bear any new costs. The project's been funded and it's done. This will offset debt that we carry purposefully for this exact reason, but it's a better proposition for us than what was laid out. It's paying down debt that we're going to own one way or another to get a better wastewater solution on a site that otherwise would just be using septic tanks.
Okay, thank you. So that actually does kind of answer my second question. But so it sounds like part of the reason this is being proposed is because of how convenient it would be to add them. I assume that like in the future, if other people wanted to be added in, we probably wouldn't do it on like a case-by-case basis like this. We would probably look for like larger expansion projects.
No, I think we would look case by case, but this is unique. This is the first time this has happened because typically, so we've done 3 sewer projects now, the Northeastern one and the Queesit Commercial District one. The actual sewer is only a small portion of the identified sewer map. So like the needs area for sewer in Northeastern is significantly larger than what we could build. So if somebody is abutting a sewer pipe, but doesn't have sewer, but they're in a needs area, they don't need to go to town meeting. They just go to the select board and say, we'll pay the associated fee, and they tie in and that's it. Five Corners is unique because it has the most treatment capacity of any of our districts. And we actually have such sufficient capacity that we can allocate to every single parcel on that map with some leftover to spare. And so that's why you're having this kind of incremental addition. I wouldn't assume it's going to be super common, but we would look at it on a case by case. If there was an abutting property that could significantly benefit from the sewer and there was capacity available, we would consider it. But yeah, the short answer is this makes a ton of sense. It would be very easy. And it's from a finance committee perspective, it would take a 6-figure number of debt off the sewer fund.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, what number are we on again? 13.
13.
I will take a motion for 13.
Motion to recommend.
And a
The
second.
Mosi second.
Thank you. DiNapoli,
Yes.
D'Amelio,
Yes.
Stacy,
Yes.
Healy,
Yes.
Petro,
Yes.
Lamosi,
The Mosi, yes.
and I am a yes. 13 is recommended. All right. So that is the warrant articles, I think, for tonight. Yes. So we obviously we've pushed on 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, and we will be doing 15 through 19 at our November meeting, bearing some additional numbers and some additional discussion and investigation. So with that, yes, Connor.
I'd just ask, has the committee selected a date certain for your November meeting? Because the second Wednesday in November is a holiday. It's Veterans Day.
Oh yeah, you said that. I forgot about that. We have not yet. My gut would be to move it just one day.
If it's possible for the members, the 10th would be better because for the town's administration, because we need to post physical copies of a warrant by the end of that week.
Right.
I would like to be able to reflect any votes the finance committee takes on those last articles in the written warrant. So the 10th from that perspective would be helpful for us if you could do it.
Call that out right now. Is there anyone that has just so I don't have to harass you all later, is there anyone that has a conflict on November 10th?
No, not me.
So we will assume we're going to go forward with November 10th for now. I will obviously codify that and send that out to everybody so that we can at least aim for that. But I don't see any problem with obviously aiming for a Tuesday as opposed to Wednesday. There's nothing in our charter that says it has to be on Wednesdays anyway. So we'll reflect that in the agenda, and we'll aim for November 10th as our next meeting to go through the rest of these. Thank you, Connor. With that, I don't think there's anything else that we need Connor or Wendy for. So you guys are absolutely allowed to jump ship at this point if you need to, or if you want to be fair.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Bye, guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Alrighty. So that's warrant articles for now. Let's move on to the rest of our agenda. So effectively, the only other pieces we have tonight is we have meeting minutes. We have a quick discussion about assignments for boards, committees, and subcommittees that actually we have a slight wrench in because we have a resignation. Does anyone have any reports from other committees as of yet?
The audit committee has met twice since our last meeting.
Okay. You have something you want to share with the rest of us for that?
Yeah, I'll just go super brief. We first met on the 21st of July. It was my first meeting as a newly appointed member. And we discussed some clarifications around pension contributions, looking into a little detail. There was a big presentation on the management letter that was released. And just some highlights from that. Talked about how the audit went well. It was done in the spring. Positive trends. Looks reconciled on time. We're following generally acceptable principles, and their opinion was that the was a clean. Basically, from there they had some recommendations, but nothing was major. Just minor things that we could be doing from an audit kind of standpoint and how we manage our finances. So I'd say overall, it was a very positive positive presentation, and there's a summary that you can look at. Well, there's a document that basically spells out the highlights of it if you're interested in going a little bit deeper. But I don't think there were any big surprises. It was really a lot of things we continue to talk about in terms of what Easton's doing well in light of the challenges that it faces when it comes to budgetary and financial constraints, and that the controls we're using to manage that are being implemented well and managed well. And then the other meeting we have on August 4th was just to determine who would present to the select board. And that presentation was done on August 10th, and Jen Starr was a representative from the audit committee to present that to the select board. So if you are interested, that presentation on the 10th is a great one to look back in ECAT and watch if you want to see kind of the highlights and a longer version of what I just said, but still much more brief than what we went through in the meeting.
What day was that again, Jen?
That was the August 10th select board meeting, was when the presentation was given with Jen Starr as representative from audit.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, and other than that, we'll be meeting probably at least one more time before the end of the calendar year. We're trying to get something together for September, but schedules have been a little bit crazy. So
I have a quick update from mine. Davis, have you had a capital?
No, not yet. But like Wendy said, we'll have one before the next FinCom meeting.
So I believe there's been two. I was only able to make it to one of the school planning committee. We're kind of in that weird middle ground where we're not at bid stage. We're still going through the various different sort of alignment and budgetary pieces, but everything's running well. Everything's going according to plan. We haven't had any massive overages or anything that was outside of that expectation of the various different overage categories where, we found, there's no like ancient prehistoric burial ground that they found in their first, setup. So everything's going pretty smoothly so far. We should have another one, I believe, in the next few weeks. So at that point, we're almost ready for the next submission. And so I'll probably have some better information, some better feedback for that at our next meeting in November. Okay, so we're jumping around a little bit, but that's good. So we'll go for these. So that's reports. The final assignment piece actually, let me do meeting minutes. Has everyone reviewed meeting minutes? I did not go through and successfully put names to all the meeting minutes because one, there's a pandemic and I've been slightly busy, and two, I realized after the fact that I couldn't even understand myself when I was saying some of their names, so I can understand why Stacy was having a hard time understanding what I was saying. The benefit is that she did manage to capture the addresses in most of those, so I'm going to assume that we're going forward with that. If I have to retroactively fix that, I will.
Can we push this till the next meeting? I had some concerns about it, but I haven't been able to address them. I just haven't had the time. But I have some concerns about the meeting minutes.
Yeah, we can bump that out to November if there's concerns on it. That's not a problem.
Perfect. Thank you.
One last thing to do tonight. All right, moving right along. So then for boards, committees, and subcommittees, and Jen, keep me honest here because you're the one who raised this with me the other day. Effectively, all of you have seen this. John, I think you've all seen this. John has resigned, so he is resigning from the board, or from the committee. So that brings up 2 points. One, we can discuss whether or not the existing allocation of assignments is where we want them to be. We can jump in and discuss his, because obviously we're going to have a gap in the existing setup. And then we are also going to have to get a replacement person. And so at the current state, we're obviously looking for people. So put the word out. If anyone has anyone they know that is interested in this, this would be, currently John's term goes through 2022. So this would be an appointment until the next election, similar to the way Jeremy, and I think Jen, anyone else do this?
Tim, right?
Tim did. Oh yeah, Tim did too.
Yeah, I did back in the day.
Back long
way back.
Years ago.
My day.
So you serve through until the next election, obviously. So if anyone has anyone else that they know that has been interested in this and really likes to sit in a room once a month and just talk to their 8 closest financial friends, then this is obviously a great opportunity. So feel free to put the word out there, see if there's anyone that's of interest. It's going to be the same process as it has been before. Anyone that does have interest, we will probably set up something similar to this, right? It'll be a Zoom meeting. It'll be a joint meeting of both select board and finance committee. People come and make their case. If you're like, Jeremy or Jen or anyone else that's gone through this process and has been through that piece, it's exactly what it sounds like, right? It's here's why I'm interested. Let's discuss. And then we, as a group, will obviously pick and choose. So with that, Jen.
Sorry, real quick, Patrick, do you know if there's like a by this date we want to have the person picked?
I don't think so. I just sent the resignation information to Connor and Dottie. Dottie and I had a quick phone call about it, about getting people. I don't know that that's something that we make the decision on. I'm willing to bet the select board makes the decision on it. We are still able to have a quorum, obviously. So it's not an immediate, if we had several resignations, we might have to have something that's very time-based, but I don't know that there's something that's specific about when that has to happen. If there is, I can get some additional clarification on it.
Yeah, sorry. I was going to say, I was just thinking about it because presumably the clerk's office would need to put their name on the ballot at some point for the election.
So they are informed as well. So they know that this is ongoing. Somebody else have something? I feel like you're all yelling.
The website says that the vacancy will be accepting applications on a rolling basis and doesn't state that there's no particular deadline. So
Yeah.
when it's filled, it's filled.
Yep.
Yeah, I wonder if that's subject to change, because I know the time that Davis and I applied, same time that Tim did, there was an end date that it was due, but maybe it just depends on what they can get.
I think it was based on where we were in the process as well with elections, because we weren't far out from an election on that one. I don't believe
It was very
No,
close.
that
Yeah,
was
it was
February.
like February. Yeah.
Yeah, so we were obviously very close to that election date. So I think that was part of that. This, we've obviously got a little bit more wiggle room on, but at the same time, there very well might be something codified that the clerk's office or Dottie will come back and say, it's from resignation, it's a 6-week thing, here you go. I'll reach out to her and we'll get a yay or nay on it. Good question though. So let me pull open the existing assignments. We'll just do this really quickly and then effectively we're done for the evening. As we had left it last time, everyone was sort of in a question moment. I think there was a few people that wanted to talk about what their assignments were. I don't know if anyone's reached out or engaged individually on those last time, but what I had Jeremy has, what is it, cluster 1 with selectmen, finance committee, reserve fund, town council, and town clerk. Christina has the accountant, collector, treasurer, and assessors. Jamie is with the police, dispatch, fire, and ambulance. Jen has DPW, period. Mike is water, solid waste, and data. Davis is inspectional services, board of health, council of aging, veterans department, recreation. We thought John, just because we didn't know because he wasn't at the meeting, was employee benefits. Oh no, I'm sorry. Where is he? Yeah, employee benefits, debt and interest, and other general government. I'm library and planning. And then Tim was schools. So at last conversation, we were sort of all in a good spot. There were some people that were curious about whether or not Tim was cool with keeping schools or if he wanted to get out from underneath the giant school responsibility. I don't remember. Was Jamie also talking about police? I feel like he wanted to keep it, but I wasn't sure. I have a note here about it. So
Yeah, so when I watched the meeting, it looked like he wanted to stick with what he had there. I'm doing okay with the schools right now. I think with the current COVID situation and a lot of moving parts and a resignation on the table, I'm fine staying right where I'm at until we can get through the election cycle.
So then essentially what we have is the 3 on cluster 7 that John had: debt and interest, employee benefits, and other general government. If anyone has an interest in swapping for that, we can have a knife fight right now where you all desperately want to move to debt and interest. If not, we can leave that as an open, and then when the new assignee comes on board, they would obviously get that for the duration of their term. And then the final point I'll make before I open up the discussion is that also at some point in the near future, Connor will give us the high sign to start talking to these departments. So it's not something that's a dramatic impact yet. Obviously, COVID has pushed out some of the budgetary discussions we were going to have anyway. Probably not until the new year, I would assume, just because we're kind of expecting the current state that we're in to continue. But I'll get clarification on that from him no matter what. So I'll shut up now. To that point, does anyone want to swap to cluster 7? Everyone's good where they are. Perfect.
I can just say, Patrick, 4 of mine are all actually just like the same department. Basically, it's all like Kathleen Kennedy. So if you do need someone to take like temporary custodianship, the ones I have are fairly low maintenance. So I'd be happy to look over them until someone new came along.
I appreciate it. I think debt and interest is something that effectively the 3 that are still out there are all Wendy's for the most part. Other general government, I don't actually even remember who you speak to on that. It might just be a Connor engagement, but it's debt and interest and employee benefits. So it's obviously stuff to do with the existing contracts, etc. I think these are some of the ones that are actually the most buttoned up, and we speak to Wendy and Connor enough that it's probably nothing that's going to raise its head in the meantime. But if we do have something that calls out, I'll remember that and I'll make you do it like a dictator. Okay. All right. Let me look at my agenda and see if I'm forgetting anything. So we skipped meeting minutes. We got assignments. That's done. Reports. Any committee member comments? None. So with that,
to say pickleball.
Pickleball again. I swear to God, if we can get a pickleball like if a regular pickleball occasion going on, we will smoke.
Those select board guys, they get nothing.
We'll just, I don't know. Barger's probably got it. He's a secret.
Money's on Chuck King any day of the week.
I was gonna say Tom seems like the competitive type. I feel like he would do well. I was like, I didn't want to spend people's time, but was this the one where they had talked about like making it like a helicopter landing area as well? Am I crazy? Do I remember that correctly?
Those are not mutually
No,
exclusive.
you're recalling correctly.
Yeah,
that
was a 45 minute
med flight landing pad.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think it's been since moved.
I thought you meant private. That makes more sense.
Oh yeah. No. Yeah.
Just if anyone's watching and they want to talk to me about a private helicopter landing pad, I have 3 acres. I'm more than willing to talk to you about it. You can just run of the mill, whatever you need, come get it. So with that, the only other comment, again, just to reiterate, if you know anyone else that is interested in doing their civic duty, please make sure to just send them my way. That was the other thing I was going to say. If anyone has any interest and they want to ask questions, you can obviously answer them yourselves. You're members of the committee. If you want to shirk that duty and make me do it, you can do that as well. My door is I guess always open, but just shoot them my way and I'll talk to whoever you have for interest. And with that, I will take Mike, I'm just going to wait for you to do it.
Motion to adjourn.
It is. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have to do it on the list again. Denapoli,
Sorry. Yes.
Tamilio,
Yes.
Stacy,
Yes.
Neely,
Yes.
Petro,
Yes.
Ramosi. He's thinking about it.
I hit the button. Yeah, I'm a yes.
And I am a yes. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you all. We will see you on November 10th.
Thanks, gang. Talk soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye,
Bye, guys.
everyone.
Yes.